Hey everyone, welcome back. We are back today to another episode with The Journey Within. I am your host, Andrea Escobar, spiritual guide and mental health intuitive. Each week, we get to connect with different healers, storytellers, visionaries, intuitives as they walk us through their journey within. This week, we have the incredible Bryan Bamber. She is a yoga teacher, mental health professional, and core energetics practitioner. I am excited to connect with Bryn as she walks us through her journey and what prompted her to take a shift and led her to where she is now. So before we start, I'm going to go ahead and let Bryn introduce herself, tell us a little bit about where she's at right now and what she does, and then we'll dive in deeper into your upbringing and all of that.
Woohoo! Okay, so my name is Bryn Bamber. I am a mental health professional trained in something called core energetics that has like a mind level, a body level, and a like energetic spiritual level. So the type of clients that are typically drawn to work with me are, often people who are struggling with anxiety, sometimes depression, and they're typically deeply spiritual human beings. And so often they'll say something to me like, I'm so glad we're working together because I can share this, spiritual insight or spiritual struggle I'm having, and I don't have to censor myself and leave it out. So that's my favorite thing to do, is to talk about all things mental health and to help other humans that are struggling. And I think we'll go into this in more detail later, but I'll briefly say that I came to this work through my own mental health struggles. And so that's how I ended up where I am today.
I love that. So yeah, one of the big reasons why I started this series was when you've walked through it, you have a different approach when you're talking to someone that's still living in it. And I feel like at least that was my experience when I was seeking mental health from different avenues. It was almost like looking down to me, I'm the patient and you're up here. And what I've witnessed, and I think it's such a beautiful thing, is when you've walked through it, you don't put yourself here. You're right there with them. And that was one of the reasons why I felt so called to talk to you, because when we've talked briefly in the past, I know that a lot of your own journey is so invested into this beautiful practice that you've built. What would you say, and this is me like getting ahead of everything, but I know that core energetics is different than psychotherapy. Mm-hmm. And you kind of touched on this. It takes more of a mind, body, whole body approach, and with that spiritual connection. What if you're someone that has been called, like you feel called to the spiritual side, you're still not there, but you are looking for a different approach? What would you say is different than from core energetics versus, traditional psychotherapy?
Sure. Yeah. So traditional psychotherapy, I guess I'll start with the way I'm similar and then I'll move into the way that I'm different.
For sure.
So I'm similar in the sense that as children, we have to choose attachment over authenticity. We have to stay connected to our caregivers or our parents, whoever those main grown-ups in our life are, over our authentic expression of who we are. So depending on your family or the household you grew up in, that's going to impact you in different ways. But all of us, even if you had, a pretty healthy childhood, there are going to be pieces of your authenticity you had to hide or suppress in some way in order to maintain that attachment and get your needs met. And so part of what I'm doing with clients is looking at that. Okay. What happened? what was the authentic thing you wanted to do or you wanted to say that you had to put aside? And do you want to continue with this habit or pattern, or what I would call like a coping mechanism, or do you want to shift it? The difference, one of the differences is these habits, patterns, coping mechanisms get embedded in our bodies. Yeah. So depending on the traditional psychotherapist, some of them will have like some somatic training and some of them don't have any. So what I do with my clients is, like an example is, if as a 5-year-old, you were super angry and you wanted to temper tantrum, but you knew that it wouldn't work out well. You had done it in the past and your caregivers or your parents either withdrew their love and attention, or they got mad at you back, or there was some, so they made fun of you. There's some sort of negative consequence. And so you learn, okay, me being angry doesn't work. The way that you stop that, what I would call this like authentic expression of your feelings, is you would hold your breath slightly, you tense your shoulders, hold them down at your sides, and you stop that pattern. Now, if you do that for years or even decades, I start working with clients sometimes, they're in their 30s and they have been suppressing anger for this whole time. What I see is that they'll have bands of chronic tension in their body from doing this for years and years. So people with suppressed anger, typically you're going to have chronic tension in your shoulders, neck, jaw, and hips. And so in addition to kind of talking about it, I'm also working with the physical body. We actually do exercises that are going to work with that tension to release the tension, and also work with your nervous system, because if, when you are angry, and this is just one example of authenticity, but whatever it is for you, like if there was quite a negative consequence, when you start to try to express your anger again in a way that's healthy by, let's say, setting a healthy boundary at work, or, the ways that anger is like this protective emotion. And when it's used in an aligned and healthy way, it helps us, protect ourselves and protect others as well. That's why we get angry if we see, someone being hurt unjustly. So by working with it in the body, then when you go to, politely disagree with your boss in a meeting, you're able to do it more because your body isn't literally like
weighing you down,
holding you back from these years of doing this particular pattern. Oh, I feel my anger rise up. I push down, I hold my breath. And then it becomes, and then, what will sometimes happen with clients in traditional talk therapy is they'll talk about it and they're like, okay, I want to change it. I want to stand up for myself at work. I want to take care of myself. But then they go to try and do it, and it's very difficult because it's still in their body.
No, yeah, it's so interesting that you talked about that. I bring this up every time to my listeners. We can't talk trauma out of the body. We have this conceived notion that we can. It's like, hey, get out of the, like, you can't physically talk trauma out of the body. And I really love that you include such a somatic approach to working with clients, because it's such a thing. Like, you were talking about anger. Anger was my safe emotion. So I could express anger, but I couldn't express anything else.
Right.
So for the longest time, my mom would witness that every time I wanted to actually express something other than anger, I would go into fist mode, and I'm just like literally hold my breath, and I'm just like, because what I really want to say isn't safe to say. Now I'm in a place where I feel way more secure addressing other emotions, but I definitely resonate with what you're saying. And then we're going to kind of take a step back. Can you bring us back to your childhood and your upbringing and how that brought you into this path? Because I genuinely feel like anytime we go into the mental health realm, you're doing it because either a family member or you have experienced something and you want to bring something else to light.
Yeah. So what do I want to say about my childhood? Oh God. Yeah. So I guess I'll say this. My childhood, my family narrative when I was growing up is that like, we're a great family and we're happy. The safe emotion for me was happiness. Other emotions, anger was definitely not okay. Even sadness, fear weren't really acceptable.
Okay.
It was just like, we're good, we're happy. So that was my family narrative, which, you know, obviously was like very painful and confusing as a child who had all the emotions but didn't really know what to do with it. Or, you know, I remember, I think of my mom at one point, I was sad or something, or like guinea pigs had died, you know, like something happened and I was sad. And she said, oh, just put it in a hot air balloon and let it float away. And, you know, I don't think she said this from a malicious place. She just obviously didn't have the tools to process her own emotions. And so she was giving me this tool that maybe kind of worked for her, but like, it's fucking bullshit. It doesn't work.
Well, yeah, you're also trying to tell, as an adult, trying to tell a kid, like, think about it like this. And as an adult, you can consciously like understand that. But as a kid, you're like, what? So, yeah.
Yeah. The other major piece of my childhood that I had no idea about until I was 29, I think was when I learned this, is that there was trauma.
Okay.
I don't remember. I still don't remember. One of the mechanisms to keep us safe from trauma is to block it out. And so it wasn't until I was doing my mental health training program and I was in a class on trauma that happened super young. So I think part of the reason I don't remember is because the type of trauma it is something that happens either in utero or in your first year of life. So we're studying this, and just like I am hitting all the symptoms, and I'm kind of realizing it. Also, like everyone in my class, including the teacher, is like seeing that I have all the
oh my God.
symptoms, and so I ended up being kind of like the demonstration person from the class, because they'd be like, oh, how does it feel like for you? You seem to have this. Which was like fucking hard. Like, I'll just say it was a painful experience. At the time, I don't think I was fully able to accept it. I started opening my mind to the possibility that something had happened. You know, I really wanted to remember. I thought I needed to remember to believe it. Like, I'm like, how can I know this is true if I don't have any conscious memory? And, you know, at this stage, it's been like 5 or 6 years or whatever since I took that class. And so now I just am like, yeah, my nervous system has the memory is stored in my nervous system. I have all the indicators that something happened. And the good news is you don't have to remember to heal. I just want to say that. I mean, I need to say that to myself, but also to anyone who maybe suspects that something happened and you don't have a conscious memory. That's one of the amazing things about working with the body, is we can work with these body memories, which for me, one of them was being in fight or flight way more often than was healthy. Being in a state of like extreme anxiety, and like I had normalized it all because it was just my reality, and I was just like, I'm stressed. Everyone's stressed. Isn't everyone stressed? Like, this is typical. And it wasn't really until much later that I started to see, like, no, this is not a typical level of stress. And yeah, that class was really, like, it felt like I got hit by a truck, I remember, after. And it was the beginning of that phase of my healing journey, because by starting to realize that there was something there, it allowed me to begin to heal it.
Wow, I'm like right now just soaking that in, because I feel like a lot of people, I'm going to include myself, if we can't pinpoint a memory, we have a hard time accepting it. And what you just said, that we don't need to remember something in order to heal from it, is so powerful. There's this like need to kind of keep going back and back and back, and you're almost reliving the same experience and not getting past that, because your nervous system, again, is trying to protect you from experiencing that pain again. So it's kind of like, oh, we can go back here. I know that here you can cope with this, and you keep going. And there's this almost a sense of frustration, because most people that are going through this don't have someone that's telling them, hey, you know what, it's totally cool that you don't remember. They're just like, why? It's this frustration of, am I broken that I don't remember? Is there something wrong with me that I don't remember? So I love, thank you so much for sharing that and being so vulnerable. It's so incredible. I feel like when you're on the other side, sometimes you don't want to bring up all of these vulnerable experiences, because you're kind of like, okay, I am now the patient in the room, even though it's not necessarily that kind of context. So that's really incredible. Do you feel like you've been able to work that out of your body, or is it still a process?
It's like 1,000 times better, and it's still in process.
Thank you for saying that.
So yeah, core, one of the reasons I love core energetics, and I'm like so passionate about sharing it with as many people as I can, is because how significantly it has changed my life. Like how much more time I spend grounded, how much more time I spend, connected to joy or playfulness or pleasure. And, it's part of who I am. And so even though I've been working on it for this particular trauma for, I think, 5 or 6 years, it had a big impact. And so there are, there are moments when I'm in a session with my mental health practitioner and I'm like, I don't want to say it, but I think, I'm dealing with whatever challenge in my life. And I'm like, I think it's, and she's like, yeah, of course it's connected. Of course.
I love that you're saying that. It's a process. I think that we have this almost timeline set, like when 2 years pass, I'll be good, or like, I'm going to see you for a year, then I'll be perfect. And it's almost like you're going to be cured and you just are born again. And I really love that you're talking about how it's still an ongoing process for you, and it can still kind of pop up, because it is, we're trying to literally alter behaviors that have been set in stone since you were literally in your mom's belly, and rechange all the information that you took in that influenced you, and kind of saying, oh, this doesn't resonate, let me pick a new one. So I thank you so much for just making an emphasis on that, because it's such a valuable kind of tool. What do you feel like has been like your biggest lesson? Like your biggest lesson through this entire journey? I know it's such a loaded question, but where you are right now, because I feel like that can change. If I ask you 6 months from now, that can totally change. So more of like where you're at right now, what do you feel like has been like a very prominent lesson that's been popping up for you, and you're finally like, yeah, I get it. Like, yes.
Yeah. So the one that I did a short Instagram live rant today about this after one of my sessions with one of my beloved clients, and what we were talking about, and also just like what is coming up in my own healing right now is it's all about acceptance. I think one of the things that I'm learning is like the most healing thing ever is to just accept that I'm always going to have days that are shitty. I'm going to wake up some mornings and I'm going to feel like crap for the rest of my life. Not every day, but I'm going to have days where I wake up and I feel, for me, I get this like heaviness in my heart. That's like one of my things. And I'm going to wake up and I'm going to feel like that. And the more I can just be okay with that and not say, what's wrong with me? What happened? I'm broken. The more I can just say, you know what? I'm a human being and I have this fucking heaviness in my chest, and that's okay. Like, and I don't like it. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to like it, but like to just not panic, to not make it me, to not go into like, how do I fix it? Or what happened yesterday that's causing, like, the more I can just like accept, like some days I'm going to feel like crap, and that's okay. And some days, I work a lot with my clients and with myself on the concept of the inner child. So this part of me that was traumatized, right? Mm-hmm. So my traumatized little girl, she doesn't like to take any risks. You know, she has a very particular worldview that was informed by her experiences, and which made total sense at the time and now don't really apply to my life at all, because I'm no longer, you know, in a place where trauma is happening. Like when you're in, if you grew up in a household with some dysfunction, you're always looking for the next shoe to drop. You're always like, what's going to go wrong? How is this person's face slightly changing that's making me know that I need to, you know, get out of the way or do whatever I need to do to protect myself? So we're, those of us who have, you know, some trauma, it doesn't even have to be necessarily like very extreme. We can get very good at reading people, reading the slightest shift in your, you know, the mouth or the face that indicates something, and then preparing for the worst. And that's super helpful when you're in that situation. The issue is when you're out of that situation, when you're now in a household that isn't, you know, doesn't have that level of dysfunction, you live in a country that's relatively safe, you know, that can become our downfall, because we're still always looking, and we're seeing, you know, you're hanging out with a friend and your friend's face changes slightly and you're like, oh my God, she hates me, because, you know, that was that skill set in that place where you were little and you couldn't move out was all you had. That was the only protection you had, was to be hypervigilant and to be always looking and then taking action. And then you grow up and you're out of that, but that, my inner child, my young traumatized part, she still thinks we're there. And so the smallest thing will happen, you know. I think hopefully I'm over this at this point, but I remember when I started my practice, I would have a client cancel one session. Not like quit, just cancel one session. My little girl would be like, oh my God, she's gonna quit. And then all my other clients are gonna quit. And then I'm not gonna have any money. And then like, and just like worst case scenario thinking all the time, with like the smallest negative thing that would happen, as opposed to thinking like what the adult part of me, or even, you know, my higher self, or, you know, my intuition, another part of me is like, yeah, she probably has a cold, so she canceled the session. But my little girl is always like on the lookout for like the problem. And here's the thing, she's still here. I've done all this healing work, she's still here. The main difference is I don't believe her as much. I don't think she's right as often. I still think she's right. You know, I had, I've had quite a successful month in January.
Oh, that's exciting.
And yeah, which is great. And so this is what my little girl says though. She's like, you're not going to be able to do it again. It was all a fluke. And like like the copy you were writing this month was like fire and people were loving it. And like, you're not going to be able to find a topic that resonates as much that next month. And you've written all the good copy and you got to write a perfect post and you're not going to be able to do it again. And for a few days, I kind of believed her. You know, I was like, yeah, she's right. I'm not going to be able to do it again. And then it was just today that I was like, oh, this is my inner child. This is my little traumatized, you know, kid that is like, when I believe her, it like really fucks with me. Yeah. But when I can just be like, she's 5. She's freaking out. She can freak out for as long as she needs to. My intuition, my higher self knows I'm going to be able to write amazing stories that are going to help my people, which is what I want to do. And then I'm going to write some stories that don't help them as much and some that are better. And, you know, it's going to be a bumpy road, but just that a little bit of distance of like, it's not me. It's my traumatized part. And so I feel like what I'm saying the lesson is just like accepting her, not being like she has to change and she has to think my copy is fire. No, she thinks I suck. That's fine. She can think that. She's 5. I'm going to like send her love and then I'm going to commune with my higher self and my intuition and I'm going to write something that's going to blow my clients' minds.
I love that. I mean, the self-acceptance part, I feel like it's something that's popping up for everyone recently, but what you just said about inner child and just accepting her as she is and not trying to change her, because I feel like sometimes I do that. And then other times I become kind of the judge and the jury. And I'm like, why aren't you doing things right? Like, why do you keep messing up? And I have to remember, you're talking to literally a 5-year-old who is not going to respond like this. And when I do speak to her like that, I have to remember you're literally speaking to her the way your dad would speak to you when you were little. Do you really think she's gonna respond to that? So I really love that you made such an emphasis on that. I feel like that inner child wound is something that is in literally everywhere. I know you're really political, so this isn't going to be too far off with what I'm about to say, but with what happened in the Capitol, I had like 3 sessions that day and everyone was freaking out. I had no idea what had happened because I hadn't gone on Instagram or I don't watch the news, so I just didn't know. And eventually I'm talking to this client. She's so rattled up that I'm like, what's going on? I know this is going to sound very ignorant on my end, but what's going on? And she starts to tell me everything. And I let her finish. And then I'm like, haven't you realized that that's just inner child, literally collective inner child right then and there? And when we kind of started talking about that, she was able to kind of take herself out. She was kind of going back to, she lived through 9/11. So to her, this was reliving 9/11. And I had to remind her, no one's attacking us. This was literally something that happened in our own country from our own people. And when we started talking about it, it was so incredible because she was able to recognize she wasn't in this, how could they do this? It was more of, oh, how sad that they're so hurt that they had to do this. Mm-hmm. And it was a huge lesson on my end because I was still kind of like, I mean, I didn't go to that far, but okay, thank you for giving me that person. Like, I was like, I mean, I'm not going that to that extreme. I'm saying you can't really blame them for following in someone's footsteps. It's not kind of portraying a different image. But when she really, like, what she really saw was she was like, no, they're all little kids. It's just like my little 4-year-old, it's their inner 4-year-old. And it was this moment of, wow, as a collective, we need to heal that inner child wound because as you said, If not, you have a 5-year-old running the shots all the time. And you think that that internal voice is you.
Yeah.
And it's literally a 5-year-old telling you, no, why are you doing this? And yeah, so it's so incredible that you're still able to recognize that and pull yourself out of that dialogue. I don't think it ever ends. I don't think that little girl or little boy in you is ever going to go away and stop saying, what are you doing? Can't do
Yeah,
this.
no. Yeah. And the good news is that's okay. It doesn't have to ruin your life. The more, like, I feel like the more I can see it's her and I can look at her with, yeah, exactly, love, compassion, and, you know, not yell at her, which, like, I used to yell at her all the time. That was my pattern. And I recently had a realization. I'm like, damn, she chills out so much faster now because she knows I'm not going to scream at her. Like, I'm building my trust with her. So she is not panicking as much.
That's so I'm going to pivot into that because what you just said there, self-trust. There's so much talk on inner child and inner child healing. And I feel like we can all, and I'm going to use a very superficial example, but New Year's resolutions. I'm going to work out and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And we made this long list of everything we're going to do. And then when it doesn't happen, you're beating yourself up as an adult and you're like, why didn't I do this? But the reality is the way that I've started to kind of, yeah, there's a lot of subconscious programming influencing that, but I've also started to kind of look at it as if you have developed a pattern of every single New Year's, you make these big resolutions and they don't come through because after a month, you're like, no more. That little kid in you is like, I can't trust anything you're saying because you lie to me constantly. So I need to hold on to the stories that make sense to me because these are actually real. What you say is a lot of just blah, 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 and don't do anything. So for me, I feel like it is establishing kind of a trusting relationship with that inner part of yourself by continually showing up and saying, hey, look, you can trust me. I am going to take care of you. I am going to speak up for you when something happens. How were you able to create that, start implementing that, and then maybe like a little how you work with clients on this? Because I think self-trust is such a big thing, and kind of with what's going on right now, so many people are pulled to try new things, but then it's like, well, what if not now? And it's, you don't even want to kind of dip your toe in because already she's kind of, or he's coming up and she's like, no, you said this last year. You said we were going to do all of this. Why do you continue to create these empty promises? And on a personal level, for me, what I realized, I was mimicking my dad. He would make all these empty promises. So to her, it was literally, you're basically doing what your dad did all my childhood. Why would I believe you? And I had to really create, like, I had to just kind of say, okay, I'm taking responsibility for everything that I've done in the past, and I'm starting from zero with you now. So it's not beating myself up for what I did 6 years ago because I didn't know any better, and creating a practice where she can rely on me and know that if I say something, it is going to happen. And on days like you mentioned, when we all have days when we wake up and we don't want to do anything, like we all have that. But instead of beating myself up because I didn't want to go on a run this morning, I know that tomorrow I will show up for her. So on those days that I'm kind of like, hey, I don't feel like going on a run. I know that we have this thing that we go on a run every day, but I don't feel like doing it today. The next day when I show up, she's not this, why did you lie to me? It's more of like, oh, you did. Like, okay, I don't have to question you. I don't have to hyper analyze everything that you're doing because you are doing what you're saying. How did you start that in your own process? Because from what you've said, you had a lot of distrust within yourself with starting new things.
Yeah. So I have a bunch of answers. My first one is that it's just like years. Like maybe your listeners don't want to hear this, but like, yeah, I've been doing inner child work for like 5 years and I'm getting okay at it now. Another thing that I want to say is that as children, we need good enough parents. We need good enough caregivers, primary caregivers. And so when you're working with your inner child, you don't have to be perfect. And yeah, you're going to yell at her sometimes and you're going to forget and you're going to have all these good intentions. And then you're going to find yourself in a screaming match with her. And like, that's okay. What I needed as a kid is the same thing my inner child needs now, is that when I fuck up, I own up to it. I say to her, yeah, like sometimes I do a lot of journaling with my inner child. That's my way of connecting, and I totally recommend it. You can just say like, I'll even just say like Bryn, and then I'll say something, and then inner child, and then I'll listen for her, write that down.
Ooh, I like that.
Back and forth. And, you know, sometimes she's like, you forgot about me. Like, you have not been paying attention to me. You've not been giving me what I need. And for me to be able to hear that and say, you're right. I thought this other thing was more important. I got my priorities off. And like, yeah, I want to do better. I'm going to do better. And slowly over time, incrementally doing better, even though it is like this, right? Where I like am a good parent and then I'm a bad parent and then I'm good. But overall, it's like going up. And so she is building her trust with me to the point that, yeah, when I sit with her, you know, and right now I do this work every day. These are like not fun answers. It's like, you have to do it every day. You don't have to do it every day, and goes faster if you do it every day. Yeah, I sit with her. She was almost every morning. I have like a morning journaling practice, and I'll talk to her in the morning in my journal, and she can tell me all the things she's panicking about. And then I have this question I ask her, which is, what do you need? You're panicking. You think my business is gonna, you know, burn down. She usually thinks that. Like, what do you need? And usually she just needs me to sit beside her. And for me, the adult part of me to not be panicking and to just sit beside her and let her panic. That's what my inner child needs. And so just I energetically like kind of visualize that and connect to her on an energy level. And the more I do this work, the more quickly she can soften when I'm sitting beside her. So, you know, if your listeners want to try something, I totally recommend the process that I do right now. And I'm actually in this, I'm doing this fun thing with all of my clients, is that we're all doing this together and we're sharing and everything, is sitting down, letting your inner child vent, asking your inner child, what do you need? Taking a minute, it doesn't have to be 3 hours to give her what she needs, taking a minute, and then tuning into your higher self and your intuition and getting those, writing from that place. What do you need? Tuning into that place. So you're letting the inner child vent, you're seeing what she's saying, giving her what she needs, and then going to your higher self intuition. So anyone listening or watching, I challenge you to do it for 7 days. I know it's hard. It's a commitment. It'll probably take, 15 minutes if you don't check your phone.
I love that you made it seem like it was going to take this long, and then you're like 15 minutes.
Yeah, 15 minutes a day for 7 days. That's a big commitment for people. I do check my phone, then I like turn it off, so I stop checking it. Um, that's my pattern. But to just write inner child thoughts. What does your inner child need? Higher self thoughts. Do that for 7 days. I swear to God, it's going to change your life. So that's my challenge to everyone.
I'm going to post that, and I'm going to literally invite everyone to join us on this challenge. So Bryn's episode, I shouldn't say this because I'm literally throwing off the format, but your episode won't be out until the end of February. So okay. I will reach out to you via Instagram to see if you kind of want to just like, hey guys, I'll do a little video and be like, we're doing a challenge with Bryn. Go check out her video so you can know a little bit more about what we're doing. Yeah, because I think it's so incredible what you just said. When you were saying that, I almost internally, I could visualize her just saying, why don't you sit with me? And you've hit such a pin. I didn't have that. My mom was the only one that would sit with me when I would throw a tantrum, and she would just be like, cry all you want, I'm not going to give you what you want. Versus everyone else, they didn't have the patience and they would just give me what I wanted.
Right.
So I have to be able to just sit with her. I keep thinking it's just giving her stuff, but I think it's more of just giving her that space of, I'm here with you, not trying to shut you up. So I like that. Wow.
Yeah, and when we do that, there's this amazing video of this father with a child, and it's just like, it's a visual of it. It's maybe a 2-year-old or 3-year-old child crying, and the father is sitting there with this calm energy. And when the child starts to like kick the floor hard and like potentially hurt her feet, I don't remember the genders, their feet, the father protects the feet, right? But other than that, like if the child is about to hurt themselves in the tantrum, the father intervenes. But other than that, just lets it all happen. It's this beautiful image of exactly what we're talking about. So when we do the challenge, I'll pull up the video, everyone can watch it. Yeah.
Wow. I feel like that's something we all, like, again, going back to that collective, as a collective, I think we all need space to just let ourselves throw tantrums so that we don't do them when we're reacting to the world. Just saying, just because I needed to say that.
Yeah, no, I think it's true. If you let yourself throw it in a safe space, it's not going to come out in when you're in that conversation with your boss or whoever it is.
Yeah, because it's like, you posted a video on LinkedIn that I'm going to kind of give a little bit of a background. You were posting a video about, actually, no, I'm going to let you share this because I read this. And when I read this, it brought me back to when I lost my virginity. And I was like, I didn't want to lose my virginity. And man, it was being able to give that 16-year-old girl and just telling her, I'm so sorry that I told you that you need, like, reading what you wrote was super just healing. And then watching that video of you literally pouting, I was like, gonna go do that next. So I would love for you to kind of talk a little bit more about that, because first of all, you have a way with words. Like, literally, I don't know why. Every single time I read one of your like articles, I'm just like, why am I taken back to a specific time? And that doesn't happen with anything that I read. It takes a lot for me to, I'm such a heady person that it takes a lot for me to transport. But every time that I read something of yours, I don't know what is it. I don't know if it's like your soul is calling to me, but girl, what you posted on LinkedIn was so powerful. So I would love for you to share with everyone a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so not a fun story, but important, totally important. So this was probably when I was in my early 20s, I started doing something called contact improv dance. It's this kind of dance that is improvisational, and you dance with one other person or two other people or three other people. And I still, well, we're in the pandemic, so it's all canceled, but I still am very involved, and I love that community. And I do it a little bit on Zoom, even though it's weird on Zoom these days. And as soon as, it's safe for us to come back together, I'm super excited to still do this kind of dance. And it can be super athletic, it can be slow, and it's improvised. So there's it's different than other dances. There's a lot of space. So when I was in my early 20s, this is when I was first learning about it and trying it. And I would have these dances that were amazing and mind-blowing, and where I let myself go and just trusted my body and let it flow and let whatever happen. And I was having a dance that felt like that until this moment when the man I was dancing with held me from behind, and I could feel his, trigger warning, everybody. If you don't want to hear about sexual assault,
I would say fast forward till the end.
Yeah, fast forward. But he's holding me from behind, and I feel his erect penis pressed into my back, and he breathes heavily, and it felt awful. I had this sinking, it went from this expansive, fun, playful, athletic dance to this sinking feeling. And I was also new to contact improv, and contact improv was edgy in all these ways. Other dances I haven't done that I second guess my instinct, which is that this is fucked. I had that sinking feeling that something wasn't right. And at the same time, I was well, maybe this is just how this kind of dance goes, and this is part of it. And now that I've been doing contact improv for over a decade, I know no, that's fucked. That's not part of the dance, And so I didn't say no. I didn't end the dance. I kind of pretended it didn't happen, and then it was over. That part was over, and then we continued dancing, and I was, nice, the nice, polite girl I was taught to be, just enduring, whatever feels good to the man. And yeah, so now I'm so angry, and I posted it on LinkedIn, and I posted it on Facebook, and I got some responses on Facebook in particular of, I got this response of someone saying yeah, that happened to me too at Contact Improv, and I never went back, and that's why. And it makes me want to vomit. It makes me want to punch somebody in the face. It makes me want to scream. And part of core energetics is to, we don't usually vomit, but is to move that anger physically, because we are animals. There is this impulse, and our bodies do know how to digest anger if we let it in to our bodies. And so I did work with this overwhelming rage I was feeling. And the picture that was there is actually a past picture that I did to explain it. It wasn't actually
that time. Okay.
But it illustrates. But yeah, the work is to punch, and when because it's pandemic, I'm not seeing clients at the studio. I normally see them, but yeah, in the studio that I have here in Toronto, I'm in Canada, we do have these big giant foam blocks and what we call a butaca, which is an axe handle covered in fabric, and you fucking beat the shit out of this foam block to process that rage. And part of the reason I wanted to tell that story is because I know there's a lot of rage right now, whether it is rage about what happened at the Capitol building, or, you know, part of Black Lives Matter, or, you know, Me Too, and, you know, all of the sexual transgressions. There's a lot of rage that, you know, I guess I wanted to share the story in part to say, like, it's legitimate, and we need safe ways to process this. We need safe spaces to scream, because things are happening that are scream worthy, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, another reason I am really passionate about the work that I do is to help you process your rage that, like, is so legitimate. I just want to, you know, say to anyone who's been, and, like, I don't want to minimize my story, but I also know, like, many people have been through things more extreme than that. And it's still enraging. That level is still enraging. That level is still not okay. And so, yeah, that's my story.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. I know it's not the same when you're writing that on your own time than actually literally talking about it in front of a camera. It's totally different. You're right. There's a lot of rage going out there, and I think we do need to have a safe space. For me, when I read it, though, it reminded me of I want to say it was maybe 2-3 years ago. I was watching this Instagram story of this influencer who I love. I got a little mad at when I saw this video, so I was just like, "What kind of message are you sending?" But she was essentially talking about her own story and how she didn't want to have sex, but she was like, it was just easier to just kind of get it over with. And at that moment, I was judging her for that because it was me. I wasn't looking at my own shit. But what I ended up realizing after, when I was like, wow, projection much, Andrea, was we do that, especially as women, all the time. Like, if someone touches you the wrong way, you're like, well, I don't want to be like, I don't want to say something.
I don't want to cause a scene.
Yeah, it's like all of this, like, I don't want to say something and come off demanding or be too sensitive. Like, there's all these things about speaking up. And I was reading that and I'm just like, she is literally embodying what as women we go through on a daily basis. And I'm not saying that everyone experiences that specific, but on a daily basis you're told, no, don't say anything to your boss, they're going to say that you're being too emotional, you're being too neat. Like, there's just this, we can't speak up because there's this shadow of what we're going to come up with. And reading that, I was like, wow, we need to talk about these moments when we don't feel safe bringing something up, so that we can empower people in the future to not get small and say something like, this is uncomfortable, this isn't okay. Like, yeah, it's just talking about those things that we often kind of brush under the rug. And like I mentioned, I never thought my virginity was this traumatic thing until I honestly read that, and I was like, wow, I didn't want to have sex. I only did it because I had this underlying need for attention, and I didn't know how to vocalize it. And I had this fear of coming off as needy and desperate. So I could never tell you that I actually like you, because it really brought up a lot. And I realized at this moment, this is a message that can really impact so many people. So thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing with us that. Before we go, I love to astrologically profile everyone.
Ooh, okay.
I love it. And then I don't know if you're into human design at all, if you want to kind of talk about that. But yeah, your sun, rising, and moon would be really cool. Just, yeah,
Okay, I don't know my rising.
that's totally
I
cool.
don't know. I know my human design is I'm a
Okay.
manifester.
No way, really. Oh, you're like one of the few manifestors that I have like in my circumstance. I'm surrounded by so many projectors and reflectors, and I'm like, no, I feel like I'm too much around you all the time. Again, core wound.
Yeah.
Do you know
Yeah.
your sun sign?
Mm,
No?
mm.
Oh,
I mean, I'm a Taurus.
okay.
Does
So yeah, so you're
does
Taurus.
that
All right.
help?
Yeah, sun
I
sign.
love astrology, and I have a few friends who are really into it, and I love it when they tell me everything, but I don't know anything. I don't read about it like on my own. I just like sit with them and they tell me, and I'm like,
I honestly was picking up so much Pisces from you. And I was like wondering, I'm
oh,
like, I wonder if she has any Pisces in her. Cause I could just kept
maybe.
getting like this mystical air. And I'm like, I have no Pisces in me. So it has to be coming from somewhere else. Well,
Yeah.
Bryn, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and tell us all about what you're doing right now, how you can help people. Before we go, if you want to just kind of let people know where they can find you, I will include in the notes all your information. So people, if they feel like they resonate with your work, they can definitely go and work with you or kind of read up on any new articles that you're posting.
Yeah. So I hang out on Instagram a lot. I'm at Bryn_Bamber there. I'm on Facebook. Um, Bryn Bamber, you're welcome to add me as a friend if you want to connect in that way. And LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn, I'm Bryn Bamber. My first name, fun fact, my first name is Erica, but I go by my middle
No
name,
way, didn't know that. Ah,
which
small
is
world.
funny. Yeah. Um, and yeah, my website is brynbamber.com. I have a free anxiety training. So anyone who is prone to anxiety, it's a training that you do in the moment. It's one of those ones that like, I feel anxious right now. I'm going to go into the bathroom. I'm going to listen to this audio. So if that could be supportive to you, you can find it at tinyurl.com/anxiety training. And yeah, I have a podcast. My podcast is called Burnout to Brilliance. Oh, and I just joined Clubhouse. I don't know how active I'm going to be there, but I'm at Bryn_Bamber on Clubhouse. I'm just like, what is this world?
I was about to ask you, what is Clubhouse? I know like it's another social media, whatever, because it's popping up everywhere with every single person I talk to. And they're like, are you on Clubhouse? And I'm like, no.
Yeah. So I joined yesterday. I don't really know what the F is happening, but from what I gather so far is that it's an audio focused app. It's all audio. And as far as I can tell, it's all live. So when you go in, instead of like a news feed of like people's posts, you have a news feed of people's rooms that are having discussions like right now. And you can go into a room and then so yesterday my roommate and I were like looking, like I was showing it to her because I was like, what is this? We were like exploring. And so we go into a room. The topic is like, we went into one room, it was called This Week in Black Art. And the panel is like Black artists from all over the world, like some in Europe, some, in the US, some in Canada, some in Africa, like just, and they're all talking about like Black art and like what's changing. And the part we listened to was like about galleries being owned, like Black owned galleries in specific. So as a Black artist, you don't have to put your art in a white owned or non-Black space. So then we're like, so we go in there, we listen, we like leave. Then we went into another room. This is all like within like 15 minutes. We go into this other room. It's talking about like find your soulmate and what is blocking you from finding your soulmate. So we go in there, we listen there for a bit, then we leave. Then you can keep going. There's like any topic in the world. You can go and there's literally people talking. You can raise your hand. And if you raise your hand, they can like call on you. And then you can ask a question. So you can be a part of the conversation. So it's like cool. It's like nothing I've ever heard of before in my
like this
life.
way more than Instagram. Oh my God, I'm like shooting
It's
myself
so
in the foot by
different.
saying this right now.
Yeah, and it's I think it's perfect for this time when a lot of us are still in lockdown. Like it's a way to like connect to other people, but it's yeah, it's wild. It's like right now I'm sure if I pulled it up on my phone, there would be like 100 conversations going on. You can pick one that resonates with you and hang out and ask questions and meet new people. It's really cool.
Oh, awesome. Wow. Thank you for the little tutorial on Clubhouse. And then it's brynbamber.com, right? If people want to.
Yeah, that's my big website. I mean, it's not that big, but the mothership, you know, the website.
Oh, perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much, Bryn. I really, really appreciate this. You are full of so much knowledge. So it was a pleasure chatting and connecting with you.
So
I hope
fun.
you have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Okay.